William the Conqueror in 1078, and it was regarded as one of the most impregnable fortresses in the world. Formerly a royal palace, the tower was, for most of its history, not used primarily as a prison, and its reputation as a place where people were tortured and executed is exaggerated. During the reign of the Tudors, however, it was a grim and gloomy death house for the condemned. The castle stands on the bank of the River Thames, and a set of steps drops down to the water from the so-called Traitor's Gate, through which prisoners could be delivered to the tower by barge. In the spring of 1536, Henry and Anne quarrelled at a jousting tournament. The king believed, or at least feigned outrage, that Anne had behaved improperly with one of the gentlemen in attendance, and ordered her taken by a heavily armed barge to the tower and deposited in a bleak cell. Terrified, she prayed for her life and insisted she had done nothing to deserve punishment. She quickly realized that Henry was not interested in whether she had committed any indiscretion. He only wanted her out of the way so he could marry again. She screamed and cried until the guards concluded she had gone insane, at which point Henry ordered her put on trial. But first, he sent a commission to the tower to interrogate Anne and make clear what she was being charged with. Also imprisoned at the tower were her brother and 3 men Henry had chosen for his scenario. Anne was accused of having illicit affairs with all 4. That supported a charge of treason, along with adultery and incest, and for good measure she was accused of witchcraft as well. Henry had his commission inform Anne that he would spare her life if she confessed. Believing that surely the truth would somehow come out, and perhaps fearing what would befall the 4 men if she confessed, Anne refused. Instead, she wrote the king a long, pleading letter from the place she called her doleful prison in the tower. Anne professed her complete innocence and told Henry she was bewildered that he would think she had been unfaithful to him. She said it was unfair to besmirch her reputation, and by transference the infant Elizabeth. Anne begged Henry for a fair, impartial trial, insisting that such a proceeding would establish her faithfulness beyond any doubt. She signed off as Henry's most loyal and ever faithful wife. In fact, there was no way out for any of the accused. The 4 men were told they could avoid execution by confessing. 1 did, the other 3 adamantly denied their guilt. After a brief, informal trial, all 4, including Anne's brother George Boleyn, were convicted and sentenced to death. In the Tower of London on May 17, 1536, they were beheaded. Anne's trial was a more formal affair, but it was conducted with the same predetermined outcome. She was tried before the peers of the realm, members of Britain's highest social order just below the royal family. There were, at the time, 53 peers, but only 26 attended the trial. Henry had arranged for any peers believed to be sympathetic to Anne to not be at the proceedings. She was duly convicted and sentenced to death, by either burning or beheading, at the pleasure of the king. Anne went to the block 2 days after her brother and the other men. Henry had decided on beheading and arranged for a celebrated French executioner to kill her with a sword instead of a common axe. Anne went bravely to the block. "I heard say the executioner was very good, and I have but a little neck," she said, the day before her execution. Laughing, she spanned her throat with her hands. And the next day it was a quick death. It took just 1 blow, and witnesses said her eyes and lips were still moving as her head landed on the straw. 10 days later, Henry married Jane Seymour, who had been a lady-in-waiting for both Catherine and Anne. On October 12, 1537, less than 2 years after Anne's death, Jane gave birth to the prince who was to become Edward VI. His arrival gladdened the king, but Lady Jane's labour was a difficult one. 12 days after Edward's birth, she died. Henry was predictably attentive to his new son and just as predictably uncaring about Elizabeth. She was sent to live 21 miles north of London at the Manor Hatfield House in Hertfordshire. Her governess did her best to care for the little girl, who, though now officially removed from the line of succession, was still a princess. The king evidently provided little support, though Elizabeth's governess complained that the girl had poor clothing and suffered